started. This is awesome. Sorry, I just have to say that. This room gives me chills. I'm so glad to see you all here. Seriously. So many familiar faces, so many new faces. I'm just here to welcome you. I'm Sarah Chambless. I'm a partner at Fenwick and West. If you don't know about Fenwick, we are a technology and life sciences law firm. So we do work for companies and investors in tech and life sciences. And me personally, after 17 years of practice, I just want to help women get wealthier and write checks to other women. That's why I'm here. So we welcome you. We invite you to enjoy the conversations that we're going to have, but maybe more importantly, make connections with each other, hang out, have a cocktail, have a LaCroix, meet 5 new people, and talk about what you hear tonight, talk about what you're interested in, and then when you walk into a room that maybe doesn't look so awesome like this one, you can find each other and reconnect. So welcome, thank you for coming.
Thank you guys. And I want to, so I'm Wyatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. We have the 10th house. We have some members here. Raise your hand if you're a member. We have some of our amazing members here, but we are a community with the intention to, very much like Sarah and the incredible partners we have at Fenwick, to make women rich, frankly, because we feel like by women starting businesses and building businesses and exiting businesses, that is our fastest path to gender equality. And we can do that if we work together in community, sort of think of us as a ways for the founder journey to let you know there's a massive road bump ahead. Whereas I also like to talk about building a company is kind of like walking through a minefield. And if you have a founder who's like, oop, there's a mine over there, then you can avoid it and you can actually cross the field in one piece and hopefully have a big exit that you can then put back into the system. So that's our goal. And the intent today is really to have transparent conversations with these amazing women that have built some incredible businesses, also an investor who has sat on the other side of the table and knows what it is to take founders through the good, the bad, the ugly. So we're gonna get deep into it, but I do want to again thank you to Fenwick and AmplifyHer, which is Meghan's fund. Who is your seed stage, correct? And I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves as well to just kind of get into who you are, what your company is, and why you started it. I'll start with you, Deepica.
Okay. Hi, I'm Deepica. I'm the founder and CEO of Live Tinted. Does anyone know Live Tinted? Can anyone really know? Yay, that feels good. Okay, well, the rest of you should buy some Live Tinted. Live Tinted is a beauty brand that's clean, vegan, cruelty-free that I created based on not seeing myself represented in the beauty industry growing up in Texas. It was a lot of the same beauty standards, and I told my parents at 16 that I was going to create a brand to change all of that. So it's pretty surreal being here right now doing it.
Hi. Am I on?
You can hear me?
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay. I'm Nell Diamond. I'm the founder and CEO of Hill House. We are a New York-based fashion and lifestyle brand. We started off as a home brand selling bedding and then had a big pivot into fashion. Now our business is about 95% fashion. And we created a product called the nap dress, which is not just for naps, but is a fabulous dress you can wear all day long. I'm wearing one right now. And I'm so excited to be here.
It's valued at over 150 million.
Yeah.
Just to give you some scale.
Thanks to Fenwick for those deal points.
I'll also thank Fenwick because we're very proud investors in both of you guys. My name is Meghan Cross. I'm a partner at AmplifyHer Ventures. We are a seed stage fund based in this area, investing all over into exceptional women. My business partner, Trisha, launched the fund about 6 years ago now, which is insane. It's been that long, and it's been an amazing ride so far. We've made 47 investments and growing. So I have a startup operating background, so I like to hang out with these guys as much as possible and offer help, like many VCs try.
She does actually offer help, by the way, which is nice. Not everyone does.
Agree.
I'm very excited to be here, Allie.
Super excited to have everybody. And so as my first question, a lot of you guys have raised a seed round. Nell and Deepica, obviously. Meghan has not, but she's invested in a lot of seed rounds. What are reasons why a founder should raise a Series A round specifically?
For me, it was retail expansion. Going from a digital D2C business and then going into a retailer. We are in every Ulta beauty door, and that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And to do it right costs a lot of money too. And so, there's ways you can do it where you get the purchase order and then you do it, but I like to do things big and scale. And quite honestly, just the risk behind it, I felt like to do it right, we needed at the minimum $3 million.
And can you speak to why it's expensive to go into retail? Because I'm sure a lot of people are out here are CPG brands, and that it's something that not many know, right? You get your first PO with Target, and you're like, oh, we basically made it, we're done, And
then it's just sitting on the shelf. It's scary.
Right.
I think it's super important to talk about if retail is for you yet, because that's the thing. You get this PO and you're like, oh my God, I sold this in, and then it's about sell through. The name of the game is sell through and actually moving through those units. And the cost up front, there's a lot of visual merchandising costs.
Right.
A lot of these retailers, Sephora and Ulta, both have programs to set brands up for success where the first few years you can be on shelves where they kind of cover some of the costs. But people to hire to do all the things, we now have an over 10-person field team whose full-time job is to go into doors and actually sell the product for us. It adds up. But I would say the visual merchandising, now we went from 1 shelf to 3 feet and now we're expanding to 6 feet within Ulta. That is not
That
cheap.
adds up very quickly.
Yeah.
And Nell, what about you?
Yeah, so we didn't raise our first round until about 3 or 4 years into the business. So I bootstrapped the business for the first couple of years, focused on profitability, and then we raised a seed. And then the A came around when I had no question that we had to take kind of hold of an opportunity in order to grow the business. We just come out with an app dress in 2019. The business had grown, I think it was 500% that year, and then it was on track to grow 300% the next year on top of that. It was the kind of growth that we had a 5-person team and we were waking up every day oh my God, what are we supposed to do here? And so it was so obvious to us that this was a moment that we had to take advantage of, and that the only way we could take advantage of that was by putting serious capital into the business. In order to grow the team, we needed to go from 5 people to a fully built out team. But it was really obvious, and I think that was definitely helpful. But I think also the market really matters, right? In this market, I don't want to pay for inventory with equity. I want to be paying for inventory with a really fabulous debt facility with really low rates. Unfortunately, JP Morgan disagrees. But the inventory in a rates environment like this, I think, makes more sense to kind of be paid for with debt. So I think it's a little bit of a market moment, and then also is there an opportunity for growth?
And you talked about profitability, and I'm interested because I think probably a lot of founders, especially in this market, as you're talking about, have to get to profitability a lot more quickly. Are there tools and sort of things you learned in that process, or how did you go about bootstrapping the business originally?
I was the only employee for the first year.
That's always fun.
Yeah, I was finance and customer service, and I had fake names. So if anyone ever got an email from Charlie at Hill House, that was me. And I would actually get emails from people that I knew that were so mean, and I've never looked at those people the same. Not, they're just customer service. They were nice to customer service, and I've always remembered it. So I was every single job in the company, and we also had no paid advertising for the first 3 or 4 years. And that actually, I think, is why we were able to kind of go viral with an app dress, is we had been forced by necessity to get really good at organic marketing. So to figure out what to put out there and what really tracks on Instagram and what influencers are going to get really excited about. And if we had raised a big funding round, right when we started, I never would have had to be that scrappy. So I think the way to, be profitable is to be as scrappy as you possibly can, and as scrappy as you have an appetite for. and it's really hard, but it certainly pays off.
Can I just say I'm so refreshed that we're even using the word profitability, because I feel like 3 years ago, especially in the consumer landscape in venture, that was not something that anybody looked at, and it was like raise for growth at all costs. And it goes back to your question, like when is it time to raise a Series A? The thinking used to be, well, it's been 18 months. I guess we should raise a Series A, and I guess we should continue on this path that not all businesses are ripe for, right? And I think now in this climate, we get to see how great founders perform when they are really getting to know their customers, and they're really getting to know them in the absence of, in excess of resources.
Meghan, are there specific milestones? I think this is a great question. Probably a lot of you are asking this. Are there specific milestones you expect businesses to be at when you're looking at the Series A? And that's the first part of the question. And the other part of the question is, if you've raised a seed, do you have to raise an A?
So I'll answer the second question first, not necessarily, but what I'll say before anything else is that seed and Series A are nomenclature, right? It's really just about, do you want to give up 20% of your company right now? And think about that, right? Maybe you do, because you know that taking advantage of this opportunity right now will get you that 20% back, and then a lot, right? And then some. So if you want to go out and raise, because everyone is like around giving up 20% equity, and in theory, your equity should be more expensive, right, than the cash you're taking in right now. And it doesn't always seem like that. It doesn't always seem like raising funds is a two-way street, but it very much should be and is. So what I'll say is the actual metrics and benchmarks that we look for at a Series A, or at that second institutional round of financing, ties a lot back to repeat purchase rate and customer loyalty. Has this team figured out how to create a community, right, to get that flywheel effect of growth, where they can then tap into that community again and again with new products and new rollout strategies in order to further saturate that community, because that's product market fit at its finest, right? And then that community will then recommend to their friends. So you get that organic marketing through, like, not to date myself, but like the pass-through rate that used to exist, where somebody says, here, check this out. So those are the types of things like, so I guess if you want a metric, repeat purchase rate is something that I'd like to look at a lot.
I'm so sorry, just jumping in here. So repeat purchase rate, that should be different across different business models, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Someone who buys a bedding set wouldn't come back and purchase another set within just a month. So how do you benchmark? That's true. So how do you benchmark across different business models, and what's a good repeat purchase rate?
Well, then it actually, you know what, it goes back to.
And maybe for those who didn't hear the question, it was really about repeat purchase rates going to be different across different industries.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you benchmark repeat purchase rate if that is the case? If it's sort of case by case?
There are benchmarks across every industry.
Yeah, there are definitely benchmarks across every industry. I could rattle them off, I don't want to throw anybody off, but also, okay, seed versus Series A, let's call it first institutional versus second institutional. First one is about how you choose to tell the story. It's about how you choose to take the metrics you have at your disposal and say, this is how we know we're onto something. And then the second stage is when you look at those benchmarks, ask your friends who are also founders, and then try and make that point. Well, you guys know better than me though. What would you say? Getting rates book.
I'd say the same, but also I think the strategies, every single investor is going to give you a different answer of what they
Completely.
view as a repeat rate and also what they look for in a seed round. So my tactic was always with investors, what's important to you, and then giving them the story that they wanted.
But I think that is a really great point from a founder perspective, and as you are going to market, don't take the same story and the same deck to every single investor that you approach. Like, recognize what's important to them, how they filter, how they are benchmarking, and that's going to come with also creating relationships, right?
And you're not making it up, obviously, but it is storytelling. Like, fundraising is absolutely storytelling. So like, I know what you're really interested in and like what your background is, and that's what we talk about more. Whereas like maybe one of our investors who's more focused on like the tech side, I'm talking a lot more about that.
Megan, I do want to go back to the you don't have to raise a Series A if you've raised a seed question, because I think it's a really important part of the overall sort of fundraising landscape, that a lot of times if you take institutional capital in the seed stage, then you feel like you have to take it later on, and a lot of times VCs want you to. Can you guys speak to that?
Well, I was gonna say, can I just say that like fundraising, even a seed stage round, I just wanted to stop being so glamorized, because that to me is what made me feel like I was supposed to raise capital. Like it was this really cool thing to give up 20% of your business. Like, why is that normalized and why is that the headline? And I understand that it's been really hard for women to get institutional funding for so long, so we needed those headlines to say like we can do it too. I get it, and I know it's still really hard, but sometimes seeing those headlines made me feel like I was supposed to. When I saw Glossier raise their like Series D and it was like $70 million, I was like, wait, am I supposed to do that as a beauty brand? Like, it was very confusing for me to see that. And now that I'm deep in, I've raised $15 million for my company, it's like, everyone's like, yeah, you go girl, and I'm like, okay, but do you know how much I own of my business? And so like, I just think like the glamorization of fundraising period needs to be pulled back, and everyone needs to decide if it's right for them.
Yeah.
Ooh, sorry, I'm passionate about it.
Well, I was going to sort of go back to the seed to Series A question, but I also think, what are sort of benchmarks that internally you've said to yourselves, you know, we should go for this raise, right? If you are achieving great profitability, what told you that, listen, I think it would be good to give more away of the business because we'll get exponentially bigger than if we didn't? Like what sort of was your logic, Nell and Deepica, when you did decide to go for that next round?
Yeah, for us, it's all about growth rate. If you're seeing growth that you cannot sustain with your current level of cash, that's a true need for your capital. If you literally cannot keep growing the business at this rate, with the cash in your bank account, you have to slow it down. That's the perfect opportunity to raise capital. Otherwise, I would not raise capital. Like I could not agree more. Like it's actually not great to raise a ton of capital. You want to raise significantly less capital and own more of your business. This is a jewel that you own and you created, and you should keep it for yourself. Like you're giving them such an amazing thing. But I think that if there's a clear opportunity that needs to be taken advantage of, and that's why I always go back to virality, like that's a moment in time. And if capitalizing on that, when we saw our growth rate go crazy, we were like, let's take the moment.
Love that. I also like to think of it as fuel. That's why I say to founders, think of it as fuel as opposed to the actual car itself. Like you shouldn't take it to just build a car, unless you're a tech company, it's a little bit different, right? Because you need, it takes a lot of upfront investment, but in a lot of cases, it should be, I know where I'm going, I just need the gas to get there, and the money is the gas.
It's also about knowing where to put the gas, right? So if you have this moment in time and you know that your customer is going to respond to this type of ad in this type of platform this way, then you know where to put every dollar. But raising for the sake of raising because of how it's been glamorized is where we see a lot of founders kind of throw spaghetti against the Facebook and Google machine, and it doesn't return that 20% of the company.
Yeah.
More.
Which is why in a consumer business, I really like having product market fit before you raise any capital.
Megan, can you define product market fit from an investor perspective? Because I think a lot of times, I don't know, who in here has ever wondered, do I have product market fit? Not that many, but some people.
Yeah.
They're all like, we know we do.
Like, if you know you do,
Love it.
great.
So it definitely is different for every company, but it is very much about the, okay, if you want to talk about it in just a metric terminology, like, is your LTV to CAC 3-to-1, right? Are you paying to acquire a customer, or is the customer there because they found out about it and now they're here for the long haul?
What about like a tech company?
In a tech company, like a B2B SaaS kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. I know, I keep going into consumer. We invest in both B2B and B2C. Okay, so retention for a larger customer and several if it's the next institutional round. I usually like to see at least, you can't always get those customers with limited cash in the bank, right? So I usually like to see a few LOIs just to show the indication that a big company is gonna take the time to take a meeting with you and go through the sales cycle. So, not to make it sound casual, but if you have a few LOIs that aren't necessarily paying or confirmed just yet, but they're there and it shows that you have the ear of a few potential customers as a B2B SaaS company, let's say, then I think that is a little bit of that validation of product market fit. Product market fit evolves too, right? The more cash you raise, the more cash you want to make, and that scale is reflective of the stage. Sorry, I hate the it depends answer, but it really does. I know.
No, but I think it's good to just like have a couple examples as well as how founders might actually think about that. Deepica and Nell have been, I hear about them all the time behind their back in the most amazing way possible, that these are founders that are absolutely beloved by their investors, which is not always the case. And when there is that great marriage, that's when I think companies can really blossom. But I wanted to ask your advice on building an investor pipeline and creating relationships. How you went about that, how you thought about cultivating those relationships for both the seed and the Series A.
I feel like my whole 20s was focused on networking. The whole network is your net worth thing. I lived in New York. And it's so crazy to think how many of the people I met when I worked at Birchbox. It was one of my first jobs right out of college, early employee there. Crazy how many people I met through that experience ended up becoming investors, including one of the co-founders. And it's just so crazy to me to think every conversation you have in this room, in any room, in the bathroom, how many of those people I ended up having a Zoom convo with during the pandemic and was like, I'm raising some capital. And I think the other interesting thing is seed to Series A. There was a lot of no's during the seed round because a lot of these people wanted to see some proof of concept, and my story is a little bit different. I did a small friends and family round to just do the proof of concept. But again, it was a friends and family round, so it wasn't like I was giving up that 20%, but it was enough to just get this literally MVP going, I guess. And I think it's just interesting how many people came back around for the Series A. It was really hard though. I'm a Cancer. It was a really emotional journey going through the seed. The people who said no, I never thought would say no. There's women of color who said no to me, and I took that extra personal because I was like, I'm doing this for us. And they said that I was thinking too small for doing things for women of color and as a woman of color. So I took a lot of those things to heart. Granted, now that I'm a little more removed from it and I understand, the whole oh my God, why am I blanking? All the acronyms, I can't even remember all of them now, but just trying to grow the whole market, right? TAM, thank you. Total addressable market, there you go. I get why they said it, but it was really disheartening in the early days when you were just like, come on, you gotta give me a shot. But all of them came back around, so it ends up all being full circle, but I would say 2 lessons learned for me was every opportunity is an opportunity to potentially get a investor involved in your business and not to take it personal because they might come back around.
Amazing, no?
Yeah, well, so I should say, when I said we didn't raise money for the first 3 years, it wasn't for lack of trying. I really, really wanted to raise money, and absolutely everybody I met said no. So that was pretty tough, but took it in my stride. And actually, one of the first people to say no to me, I was so devastated by. Awesome female investor who was at a really big VC fund. She said no to me. We kept in touch as friends, and she kept kind of checking in, and I would fill her in on the business. And 3 years later, on this when do you know you have product market fit thing, I noticed she's checking in on me a little more. And I was like, oh, it's kind of like a boyfriend. You're like, he thinks I'm cute. I think I'm looking good. I'm like, this is great. And she kept checking in on me, and then I sent Q1 results or something like that to her. And she called me the next day and she said, I'm gonna send you a term sheet tomorrow. It's gonna happen. And I was not raising. And then actually AmplifyHer said yes the next day, which was amazing. So that was the first 2 checks were from female investors, which was awesome. And I just that was just such an amazing moment, because she had said no before, and I had really thought this was an amazing fit for our fund, or for their fund and for our company. And I think that, you know, we've continued even in our Series A that was super oversubscribed. Like I had people who committed like big amounts who, like, one of them backed out at the last minute. I had people who I thought were like shoo-ins, who were so into it and had been like talking such like, you know, nice things about the business, say no. You still get those no's, even if it's like a good deal or like an oversubscribed round, like that never, ever, ever ends, and I still take it so personally, and I think that lasts forever, but I think that developing long-term kind of sustainable relationships with your investors, I'm so lucky to really have strong ones. Everybody's been in kind of every round, which has been awesome, and our board seats are all super supportive too, so, yeah.
It's interesting because, like, going back to the product market fit question, it also won't be a tangible answer to that either, but I will say what I noticed. So I reached out cold to Nell to invest in a Hill House.
On Instagram, right? Or no, it was email?
No, email, I'm a grandma, yeah. But like, I think I did see the community bubbling up even then. You were selling bed sheets,
yeah,
which is the hardest thing to sell through the window of Instagram, right? So I did see the response in this very grassroots way, and it is like, to the repeat purchase question too, you can make a story about the audience before you even have the sales to talk about. You did have sales, something like, even if you don't have that, you can talk about audience, and you can talk about the email list that you have that you are building up your brand around in order to then drive product to. So if that, going back to that, and I was thinking about that conversation too, when we decided to invest the very early stage, we actually reached out cold. So it is very much about doing everything at once, right? Like building the product, building the community, and in doing that, you can also build the relationships with the investors when you don't even know it yet.
Meghan, from your perspective, because I think a lot of people doubling down on the investment is, yes, the business doing well, but also the relationship you have with investors. Who are some, like, can you talk about some things that founders have done that have been particularly impressive or helpful as an investor?
Post-investment?
Yeah, or even when you haven't invested yet and you're thinking about it, to sort of keep them engaged in your potential down the road pipeline.
Yeah, they made money. Yeah, so I think I go back and forth on the ways to engage investors before actually taking in the capital, because I think a common misconception that doesn't always work is like meeting, staying in touch, having somebody on an email distribution in order to say, like, here's our update on what's going on with the company. Letting investors hang around the hoop a little too much, that actually does not always work. We talked about this yesterday too, like asking for advice rather than asking for money. I know a lot of people are advised to do that in order to build a relationship. Also doesn't really work. At the end of the day, you have a business to run a process, right? Give yourself 6 weeks to raise as much as you can within that amount of time. Of course, there's a lot of variables there, but manage the process as a CEO is what I would advise, because as an investor, it's if it's made easy to say no, or to say maybe you can have a shot at this later, like I've seen a lot of investors take founders up on that opportunity. So, and not to say it's a good thing, but I would say just
some investors want to do looky-loos, which what that means is they have other companies that they're thinking about investing in, so they're information gathering, utilizing your company as market research. Or the other thing that I've seen happen is they actually have a competitor and they want to get all the information possible on your company.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which it really sucks. So it's like share as much information as you feel comfortable, but not enough to like have them be able to copy your business. I would say, and then we're also gonna get into terms as some of the next questions, but the other thing I would say to your point about asking for advice, I think that tends to work more with angel investors.
Yeah.
Then, because it's like, if you're looking for somebody who strategically would love to get involved in the business, a lot of times that person's gonna wanna end up giving you money if they are an expert in your field, which is why you're gonna want to have them as an angel investor. So I think that tends to work a little bit more in the like earlier stage, non-institutional.
Another thing I'll say too is, given the current market we're in, there are a lot of investors who are of the mindset where maybe I'll have another shot at this 6 months from now at the same valuation, unfortunately. And I'm just telling it what I've heard other investors say, if that's helpful. So, yeah.
So last question I have for you guys is on key terms in your term sheet. And maybe it's not totally comfy because you guys are set on other sides of the term sheet together, but I'd be interested to know, especially from like a founder perspective, and everybody, having a great attorney could not be more essential. We were just talking about this in the back, and I was saying how I've seen in the last year 2 people basically lose their businesses because they didn't have great legal representation. So it can't be understated enough, but also knowing what you want from a founder side and being educated on it, I think is important. So I'm interested to know what were some sort of key terms that you either discovered were really important in the negotiation process or that you wanted to sort of keep as part of your overall founder journey.
Sure. The one that like stood out right away, I mean, there was a lot, right? Like you said, good lawyer is super key. I tell that to everybody because it can get scary. And so the first thing that came to mind was there's a clause that the lead investor can dictate whether you sell your company or not based on a certain multiple. Like they can say, like if I get an offer tomorrow to sell my company for $20 million, they can block it. And I didn't want that power. Like you just never know, right? Like obviously I have dreams to sell this for, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars and all things, but I don't want anyone to be dictating my future in that way. And so there's ways to structure it. I think something I did was bring on an advisor, like you were saying, like all of my friends and family around were just really smart people and entrepreneurs that had exited their companies that I had built in my network that I could go to and call to like just vent, cry, ask for advice and all the things. It was like, listen, and I positioned it as an opportunity to them too. I was like, you have advised me for free. I want to give you this opportunity to invest in my company. And I think that they really respected that. And people like Bobby Brown put checks behind my company. And
that's an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I do feel that way. It's like this delusional level of belief you have to have when you go into these rooms that make people just like, I know, delulu is my favorite word right now. I'm just this delulu level of just confidence where you just go in and you're like, well, why wouldn't you want to put a check behind me? But it was great because when I went through the term sheet process, and I'm sure these same people will help me through an exit process, they told me, they were like, watch out for this, make sure this isn't there, you don't want them to do this. And so obviously your lawyers are on your side, but there's nothing like somebody who's been through it, especially another woman founder. Like they just really have had my back in a big way, and I'm so grateful to have them on this journey with me. But yeah, for me, there was like this specific thing where it was like, I don't remember the language, that was what the lawyer told me, but it was something around like a blocking right. And I structured it to be in a different way where basically it said that they could, instead of them having a blocking right, I would pay them back their money as a guarantee before I paid myself, because they're gonna want their money back in some way or another, right? Like this isn't a charity, they're putting their money behind you to get a return. And so for me, and again, that's not for everybody, other people might be like, okay, I'm fine with it being 3x my valuation before I can sell my business, but say that you get an opportunity and somebody says, hey, $25 million, this is yours, and you're like, well crap, I have to pay. I literally can't because my valuation was higher than this. This gives you the opportunity to sell it, and then you can pay back your investor what they gave, and those are just negotiation tactics that I learned.
So mine's around vesting. So because I didn't raise money for the first kind of 4 or so years, I owned a larger portion of the company than would be typical at our Series A, and so
That is kind of typical.
I don't know, what's typical for founders to own? I was told it was not typical. I think it varies. Yeah, I owned a majority stake in the business still, and would after the Series A as well. And that was fairly non-traditional. And I told a little bit of the story last night, but Fenwick are our lawyers. The amazing Al Cooper has been our lawyer for years and years now through all 3.5 rounds. And I took it very personally when a term sheet came back pretty late in the deal that wanted me to vest my equity. And I had just given birth to twins in a pandemic, so I was a little postpartum. But I was
serious. I was like,
it was very intense.
Significant. Yeah.
It was very intense. It was our first big round of funding. It was a lot of money, and I was so emotional about it. And I actually called Al Cooper, and I just presented. I told a little bit of this last night, but I just presented to like the all-male investment committee at this big, huge VC fund. And my boobs were leaking, and I had like 2 newborn babies to the side of the computer, and I was like, my life's a mess right now. And I called Al Cooper, and I just started crying, and I was like, they want me to vest my equity, like I've given my entire life to this business, like this is everything I do, like I gave birth 2 weeks ago, like I was so upset. And the importance of having a good lawyer for those deal terms is Al like sat with me through that. I think she just had a baby too. She sat me through that, and she was like, look, what are you actually upset about here? Because let me explain to you like what these deal terms mean, which is that this fund needs to make sure that you as the visible founder are not gonna like peace out to Palm Beach and go sit there with a book and not work for the next 7 years. And kind of explaining the idea behind the terms helped me to negotiate back, right? Because it helped me understand their point of view and how to come back at it, as opposed to just taking it personally and being like, they don't value what I've given to this company, which was actually the opposite. They really valued it, and they needed to make sure that I was gonna keep working. So Al really helped me kind of push back on those deal points and get to a vesting schedule that I felt good about, and a schedule also that didn't vest all of my equity. So I think the founder vesting, it can be really sticky and really difficult and very personal, and it's important to have a good legal partner.
One thing I'll say about terms across the board is that they're there for a worst case scenario, and like, so it is not personal most of the time. It's funny, but like, it's very much about just planning for the worst. It's baseline, it's there in case you need it. That's always something to keep in mind. Another thing I'll say about terms in general is, who here has not yet raised a seed round? Okay, so at the seed stage, I would go on the nvca.org website and pull up their term sheet, the template, and you don't want to steer too far away from that. That template is like there for a reason. It makes the pie bigger for everyone. At the end of the day, you don't want to do a lot of cute terms, because seed stage investors are extremely aligned with founders. We're right there with you. We want to make it bigger. We want to set up this foundation so that at the later stages, when other things come in, when bigger funds come in with maybe some of these extra little terms here and there, at least the baseline is clean and market standard.
Yeah, that's why my Series A was so thorny, because my seed was a convertible note, so it was like super simple, and I got it off the Y Combinator, website.
So that is all from us. I hope you guys found that helpful. I thank you guys so much for being very honest, and I feel like the theme for today should have been like, don't take it too personally.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing? I'm so sorry, but like, okay, going back to networking with investors and that whole concept, I met Deepica through a founder in our portfolio, and great founders, no other great founders. Like the best deals come from founders knowing founders. So everybody in this room should be friends with each other. That's what I'm saying.
And be part of Female Founder Collective. That's the entire premise. That's how I found investors in my previous life too. So thank you all so much. I'm excited to bring in Sarah again. And by the way, I think everybody here, it's like last night we did dinner, and two of the people at the table were talking about Fenwick and just the best testimonials I think I've ever heard for anything in my life. Mm-hmm. Just in how crucial it is to have people like them on your team going into battle with you, because that's kind of what the term sheet negotiation can look like. So Sarah's actually going to be in conversation with Brooke Baldwin, who is going to be talking about, I'll bring it over to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, Brooke.
Hello. Hello. By the way, that conversation, my brain just got like exponentially larger. I have never started a business. All these acronyms, this is like extraordinary. And for all of y'all to hang on there, everyone, I can feel the energy in the room. Like, so helpful for everyone here. So I learned stuff too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And now you're gonna go start a business.
Yes.
And there's 10 people in here that
You
are
guys
gonna
are gonna help
invest
me
in
start
it.
my
So,
business,
yeah, we're gonna do that. I feel like you really don't need an introduction though, honestly.
I never assume.
Okay, so if you don't know who Brooke Baldwin is, she had her own award-winning live daily news program on CNN for more than 10 years. She wrote a best-selling book called Huddle, which is amazing, and actually what I will say, so personally, I listened to your book a couple of weeks ago while I was doing 20 other things, because I'm a mom of two and I'm a law firm woman. But I had you in my head and I felt like Huddle gave me a lexicon that I didn't have before. I didn't have a word for what happens in these spaces, and actually, Allie, what you and Rebecca have created with FSC, I think is like the ultimate huddle. So I definitely want to talk about that, but you also wrote very recently a bombshell first-person essay for Vanity Fair about your experiences at CNN, and I want to unpack that as well. And if you guys haven't read it, it's a scorcher, and you should. But I guess before we do any of that, like, can we just talk about like how we reconnected?
Yes. This is a fun story. This was like a month or so ago.
This is super fun, and also Christine. Where's Christine? She's in here. Yes, there she is.
Oh my gosh,
okay.
you're here.
Yeah, she's
I
here.
love you so much.
We love her. We love her. Okay, so it was a huddle,
Yes.
incidentally. I had jumped off a plane to attend a dinner that M13, these incredible female GPs at M13. By the way, if you guys don't know the research around why you always need 3 women in the boardroom, I feel like actually, so Anna, Barbara, Lizzie, Francis, and then we had Christine there. So 3 very powerful women hosting a group of women for dinner. Probably equal parts female founders and female GPs in this room of maybe 30 or 40 women. And Christine introduces Brooke to the group. Brooke is talking about how she just relocated from New York to LA for love. And I'm sitting there like, I'm gonna say it. And I like sort of jumped in at the end of the conversation. I was like, did you go to Westminster?
Y'all, we went to high school together.
Yeah, we went to
high
high
school,
school.
Atlanta.
So
many years ago.
Yes, and she
I was
talks
like, go
about,
Wildcats?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that is now the refrain. Go
Love the
Wildcats.
connection. Thank you for having me.
100%.
Yeah.
So so let's get into it. Can we talk about Vanity Fair?
Let's just rip it hard. Let's just rip it.
Let's just
Yes.
rip right in. So again,
Can I give a little context?
Do it.
So I have been a journalist for 20 plus years. I'm from Atlanta. I went to Chapel Hill undergrad to do Spanish and journalism. I did the whole like live in small town America. When all the probably you guys get to live in the big cities, all my friends leaving Carolina were like sharing, like an illegal loft in East Village. I was living basically in like East Bumblefuck America, and reading like rolling the teleprompter with my foot and covering water skiing squirrels and doing all the things in hopes of maybe one day making it to New York City to the Today Show or to CNN. And holy shit, I did it. Okay, like I did it. And so I had this extraordinary job at CNN, and I hosted my own show. I was the only woman to host 2 hours by myself for 10 years. Okay, I'm proud of it.
youngest male or female.
Yeah. But that all came to a screeching halt 3 years ago. Back to you.
Yeah. So I think you talk in the article about how you were the total yes girl.
Yes.
You never said no to anything because you were afraid there would be someone hungrier who was just ready to jump right in if you ever put your hands up and said time out.
Because there was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There always is. And so in that regard, you were dealing with gaslighting and manipulation and backstabbing and at the end of all of it, you just realized you couldn't keep your mouth shut anymore.
Yeah.
So can you just talk to the group about how you found your voice and then how you kind of can't unfind it once you find it?
Wow, okay. I'm gonna try to do this. No, I could take so long to talk about this. So I'm from the South. I feel, not to stereotype myself, but you know, I was brought up, you can be anything you want to be, just like color within the lines. Yeah. And so I was a really good girl. I was like National Honor Society and president of my class too many times and an athlete. And
she was like a cheerleader and an athlete.
And I threw the shot put. Okay. And so, but ultimately, I just said yes a lot. How many people in here, like real talk, are in your 20s? 20s, okay. 20s are when you say yes. 20s are when you hustle and you climb and you work the crazy hours and you just do all those things because you are hungry because you're dreaming, right? And so I did all of that. And then ultimately I came to CNN at 29 and ended up with my own show at like 30, 31. When you're sitting in a seat and anything around the world can happen and break and the teleprompter goes blank and it's on you, right? So obviously I'm like sharing oxygen with Wolf Blitzer, so I'm waking up really early, I'm doing extra homework because that's what we women do. And I say, yes, go cover the escaped inmate in South Carolina tomorrow. Yes, go do the hurricane. Yes, you know, all the yes. Go fill in for this person. Yes. And I think when you come up in that culture, it's very hard to say no. And also, and I won't get into this, but part of the piece also talks about my childhood and the modeling from my mom. Okay? And I saw my mom stay in a marriage for a very long time and just say yes. And so I was the yes girl. And I was the yes girl. Like, I feel like at some point we graduate from being the yes girl to realizing no is a complete sentence. I just realized that, like, I'm 45 in July. I think I just realized that like 3 years ago.
I love that, by the way. No is a complete
No
sentence.
is a complete
I feel like
sentence.
I need a shirt that says no is a complete sentence.
It was, yes. And so, ultimately, we covered this guy, Donald Trump, who became president. And the second that happened and how I was asked to cover him was hard. And my soul started, to be just really frank with y'all, like withering. A lot of lies. I just am really big on integrity. And so I started covering women and created a women's series because I was like, I had to like do something to fill my bucket. And ultimately I wrote this book called Huddle and I started sharing spaces with like baller women. And then I started showing up at work like, I learned this word no from these women, from congresswomen and badass professional athletes and the only 3-star Michelin woman chef in America and you know, wanted to talk to Allie and Rebecca, like all these women, and I started speaking up for myself. Not in a douchey, like super squeaky wheel way, but in a like graceful, no, I'm actually not okay with this, or I would prefer to do it this way, or what have you. And I finally spoke up and I asked for this one personnel change on my team, and that was the beginning of the end for me. And I'll tell you this one crazy story. I've actually never told this publicly. I allude to it in the piece, but I tried to get this person off my team, my writer, my producing team. We just ran out of track. And also it was abusive and toxic, this person, and how this person was treating me, and I go into detail in this piece. But basically, like, I'm yanked into my boss's office. This is the president of CNN at the time. And he makes me bring my agent. Which I've never happened to me in 20 years. So I'm like bringing my mommy to go to the principal's office. And obviously I go get all glammed, I go into the hair and makeup because like that's what you do when you meet with a boss. So I'm like eyelashes and extensions and like here I am. And I'm like waiting to hear the fate of whatever. And for 5 minutes we're standing in this corner office and he's talking to my agent about the view out of Anderson Cooper's office.
Just flexing. Ignore you.
Total power move.
Who's that in the corner? We don't know her.
I care so much about my show and about my career, and I am literally like doing that like mental gymnastics over like, what the fucking fuck? And then finally we get to me and it was a whole thing, but blah, yada, yada, blah, blah, I left. Read the piece. And
You gotta read it.
I left, and it was not cool how it all went down, but I'm also glad I left. It was a gift. But like, I realized that I was really a mouthpiece, and I wasn't wanted as a voice. And whether it's TV news or in business or in corporate America, or if you're trying, as women trying to get funding, like, we are unfortunately still, so few of us in these very male spaces. And what I have learned, and then I promise I'm going to stop. Is just in being shut down and finding my voice.
Well, and what you just said about being a mouthpiece versus a voice really resonates with me, because I feel like even within allegedly diverse spaces, we've all experienced that situation where there is someone that looks like us at the top who is like towing the party line.
Yes.
And I call it body armor.
Oh.
Right? They send her out on the front lines to be the body armor, to deliver the bad news, or to explain why the answer is no, we can't do that for you right now. So that just really resonates with me personally.
They purposely send a woman
Oh yeah,
with the armor.
you just send her out and have her be like, okay, you guys, so this is why we can't do it, but it's okay.
Have you all experienced this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So huddling.
I wrote a book called Huddle.
We got to do this.
Yeah.
We
This
are
is a
huddling
huddle.
now. We are huddling. But what I want to talk about, because you say in the book, a gathering of women does not a huddle make.
Correct.
So can you tell us what is a huddle and how do we create this in our own spaces?
The way I define, thank you for asking me about that. I'm so passionate. This is like my life ethos is huddling. It's like the biggest compliment to be called a woman's woman, and I am a big believer in like the rising tide lifts all ships. And so a huddle is a noun or a verb, and it's when women are energized by the mere fact of our coexistence. This is a huddle right now. I wanted to write this book because I wanted to legitimize what we women, and especially Black and brown women in America, have been doing for centuries. Like, all the bros go drink their bourbon and go golf and like, hey, I'm gonna help hook you up here, I'm gonna do this. Like, why aren't we doing that more, and why can't we put a name to the thing that we have been doing, and to sort of galvanize this movement in huddling so that we're not like just with a few seats at the table, we have our own damn table. And yes, like, women also, as you alluded to, sometimes the worst people I have experienced, like my first TV job, this one woman was like, she did a horrible thing to me, and I'm like huddle-tastic, I'm like, how can I help you? And she's like, I'm gonna take you down. And I learned the hard way. We've all learned the hard way. And so let me just like point that out, that this is all not like sunshine and lollipops and unicorns. But a huddle is something that is different from like a bunch of women getting together and having a wine night, and I'm totally here for that. But this is when we are like literally right now, when we are all getting together, like, how can I help you? Let's strategize. Like sponsorship, mentorship, leaning on one another. It's so important.
I love that, and it really is what Allie, what we're all committed to creating is not just wine and cheese. I love wine and cheese personally. I'm gonna have some later. But it's really about strategizing and about galvanizing action, and actually I think too, like, helping people to feel more confident as they do go into male-dominated spaces.
And by the way, if you think of any famous woman, I mean, I talked to everyone from Meghan Rapinoe to Stacey Abrams to these like 6 of these 19 Black women judges in Houston, Texas, to Chef Dominique Crin. Like, you name me one successful woman, and I will point out that like all of the women who are supporting her. Well, no one is doing this on their own.
And you mentioned this in the book, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but you talk about how women leaders in business are more likely to be successful if they have a huddle that is around them. They have other women in leadership positions in their organization that they can bounce ideas off of, or there's a safe space for them to vent and strategize around what the right solution is inside their organization.
It's literally the point that you guys just made about, know the other female investors. Like, it was what the point she was making about the one of the best ways to get funding is by knowing others and
sharing
that way.
flow.
Sharing, yeah.
So and you mentioned this, so we were both raised in the South, and we went to, you know, an elite private day school, and we were very privileged to do so. And you talk about how important it is to just acknowledge and confront the fact that historically white women have advocated for white women's experiences, and with blinders on and really at the expense of other diverse groups of women. So one of the things I definitely want to acknowledge, unpack, confront, and problematize is how we, as white women, can create safe spaces for diverse women. I mean, because we are two women up here just talking to each other, so I feel like we just need to.
It's our imperative. It's our imperative. I am a privileged white woman. This is why I started my Huddle journey in Harris County, Texas, because I heard the story about these 19 black women who in a midterm were running for judge seats. And normally, like,
nobody votes for judges. I'm an attorney. I don't know what vote
nobody
judge
knows
I
anything about
for.
judicial elections, and it's a midterm, like, snooze fest. But these women are extraordinary, and they did this extraordinary thing, which is they went viral. This was in 2018, and someone passed this, like, on my desk in 2018. This was when it was the huge woman wave, and more women than ever had been running for state, you know, local, state, and national office. And our cup runneth over at CNN. I'm talking to, like, incoming congresswomen and governors. But I was like, you know, asterisk footnote, I'm gonna remember to find a way to find these women, and I did. I took 6 of the 19 out to brunch in my Huddle journey. So I was in Houston, and they all got together, all 19 of them, and it's like, if you can see it, you can be it, right? So they got this photo in the Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas, and they looked so regal. They were like, this is, if we look it, we can be it. And they became rock stars, all, you know, they all won their primaries. They didn't know one another, and they're standing around in this primary party, and they're counting all the black faces. And they're like, we've got to come together and stump together and win together. And they actually defied their own party. They defied the Democratic National Party because they didn't want them. They didn't want a bunch of black women running together and stumping together in Houston. And they were like, that's cute, but we don't care. And they became one another's sisters and aunties to the kids and the, you know, babysitters, and they all made it happen, and they all won. And then they all won again 4 years later. And it was all in how they created a private Facebook group and created a text chain. They called themselves Black Girl Magic Houston. And I recommend, like, Google the picture, because it's incredible. They have an incredible story. So it's all about intersectionality. If I'm a white woman, and it's like our fighting for a right to vote. 100 years ago, we were all standing shoulder to shoulder, white women and black women, but what happened? We ditched the black women. White women won the right to vote. It took black women 50 more years. And there's this slow reckoning that nobody's free until everybody's free, right? Fannie Lou Hamer. We have to remember that, and we have to pull everyone up next to us.
I know. So I think we have a generational opportunity here, right? I mean, you and I in our mid-40s have an opportunity to mentor, sponsor, be an advocate, pound the table for other women who are more diverse, who can create more diverse spaces for other women. But you also talk about in the book, this is super interesting to me personally, being raised by a single mom who was a professional, but you talk about this generational gap in the huddles so women had, ironically, a little more time to organize when we had less access to the workforce, and now, you know, there's this entire generation that got skipped, and we are now in a space where the women who are 20 years behind us know how to do things that we didn't have an example for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this is like the one that got away. Like I didn't do any research on the generational bits, but I feel like a microcosm of my response is I found myself at the women's Final Four basketball. This was Minneapolis, so I think it was 2 years ago. And I'm sitting, not to like be, but whatever. I'm sitting in a box, and like I'm with Meghan Rapinoe and Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart, right? Stewie, have you guys been to a New York Liberty game? WNBA? God, you guys. Okay. So Meghan Rapinoe is no. Sue's like my age. These are soccer players? Yes, okay. So in basketball. So Sue is like sort of, you know, she retired last year from Seattle Storm. She's been fighting and has been extraordinary. But like when it comes to how they've all been traveling, you know, you guys know about the whole like equality fight in Meghan Rapinoe with regard to soccer. And so, you know, Meghan's been fighting for X, and then Stewie rolls up and she's like, well, you know, the women have just wanted to be on like in Comfort Plus, let's say, on a Delta Airlines plane. And they just, it's extraordinary like how they've been traveling as these incredible athletes. And Stewie rolls up and Stewie's like, why aren't we flying charter? And now you have, you know, Caitlin Clark who's enabling them to start doing so. It's the mentality of like these younger women who I have so much hope because of you guys, you know, because me coming along, I'm 44, I was like, are we, like, is this possible? I'm sorry to be asking, but I don't know. You guys are like, yes, well, of course we're going to. There is no other option. And so I find hope and solace in knowing, like, demand it.
Yeah.
Just demand it. Expect it.
And then we're gonna look to you guys for guidance. So truly. So in tech, right, that you were describing what you saw bubbling up in Texas in 2018, and we saw some really interesting stuff in tech as well. So everybody in here knows the statistics. 2.2% of women get, 2.2% of venture capital goes to female-founded companies.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a little
This
crazy.
year was less, 1.8.
Yeah, so it's going down. So this is actually what I wanted to talk about. So
It goes up though if you count for co-founders.
so that
Wait, what'd you say?
so I love this
It goes up
because
to 26% if you count for female co-founders.
these women actually know the statistics. So it does bump up it bumps up to mid-20s if you
That's
have
what
a
I'm
male
saying.
co-founder.
Okay.
But again, let's just focus on the fact that 80% of venture capital is going to all male teams. That's not cool. It's not okay.
Yeah.
With Me Too,
Yeah.
right? So we had Me Too, we had Time's Up, we had some pretty powerful exposés about specific men running very powerful, well-funded venture-backed technology companies in Silicon Valley, they're writing books that are going viral, and we did see a bump. It bumped up to 4.4 in 2018.
Wow.
So 2.2 to 4.4. We doubled the statistics, still horrific. But then it fell back down during COVID.
Why?
And great question. I have many sort of theories. So I would say like women leaving the workforce,
Yeah.
right? Because we had no childcare.
Everything.
You have to go back to what was comfortable.
Yeah, everybody diverted to pattern matching, which we know that pattern matching is how many venture capitalists make decisions about how they will invest. And I'm not just talking about pattern matching to the DNA of the founders. I'm talking about also just pattern matching to, the company DNA. So anyway, here we are, 1.9. How can we use the Huddle to just change the numbers, to just move the numbers?
So just again, piggybacking off the last conversation, I think it's like we're strength in numbers. It's aligning with other women who are successful. It's being graceful. It's being like gracefully aggressive in befriending them, in peppering them with questions, and understanding what makes them tick, how they're successful, like getting on the inside of that, volunteering to work with them. How can you help them? I think it's just in how you can lean on these women to then ultimately, if you are one of these people, empower one of these women, empower, like make sure you look back and see who you can help. It is on you. And, in the opposite way, like it's amazing. I can't imagine if I had social media when I was younger to be able to reach out to folks, just cold DM people in like a classy way, just to say, can I have 5 minutes of your time? Like, take advantage of that and find ways where you can just pepper people with questions as best as you can to just become more knowledgeable, and then maybe try to emulate their success would be my first instinct.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, I also think about I got asked this question.
What did you say?
So, family member who is the COO of a nonprofit, and that nonprofit wanted more women in its membership.
Okay.
So it's a nonprofit for business leaders. And he said, well, you do a lot of stuff in this area, Sarah. How do we make our membership more diverse? And I was like, well, look at your board.
Yes.
What does your board look like?
Yes.
And it was like, okay, wait, I need to change the composition of my leadership. But seriously, I was like, no, you need 3 female board members.
Yes.
Do
and
it.
Also the men who are in those positions, instead of helping out another man get the next job or the next board position or whatever it is, like, go out of your way to find a woman and bonus points if the woman, has a different skin color than you, let's say, to be able to sponsor that person, to be able to find ways to bring someone up in a way that maybe she wouldn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And ask her to bring along 2 of her friends who are business
I love that,
leaders.
the bring 3 friends thing.
Bring them in, and now y'all can huddle and tell us how we need to change our organization to maybe make it more accessible to women.
Yes.
So I do think about what leadership looks like a lot, and how, because it's not 1, it's not 2, it's definitely 3.
You can't be the armored up lady.
You can't be the body armor. That's not okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna send you into battle and let you protect us and take the fire. So for women in this room who are perhaps in a professional setting where they feel isolated because of their identity, what would you recommend they do to find their huddle? How do we find our huddle?
I would find like-minded women in your workspace. Number 1, if we're thinking just within the workspace, I believe that we're all balls of energy, and you can tell who's a huddler and who's not. And by the way, the people who aren't huddlers, it's okay, leave them be. Find other women with shared values, shared passions, find, and if it's not at work, put yourself out there and find people who, have, shared hobbies, shared passions, shared activities, so you are aligned with these women inside the workplace and outside the workplace. I always say also, do hard things with your huddle, do hard things with other women. You are forever bonded, that way.
So true.
Yeah, we've all done hard things, but it's another thing. It can be so isolating when you're alone. And there are other women who are also having to do those hard things, so do the hard things together. Off the top of my head, yeah.
I love that. So I guess, where are we on time?
Oh wait, can I ask one quickly?
Please.
Be vulnerable. These judges, these black women in Texas, when they have a question about a trial that is in front of them, many of them are overseeing family court, do you know what they do? They stop the trial. They go to their phones, they go to the text, they go to the Black Girl Magic text chain, and they ask for help. We don't ask for help, I think honestly, because we don't want to burden people. We must be better at asking for help.
That is such a good point. Yeah, 100%. Last night when we were at dinner, had an amazing group of women at dinner, and we all went around and shared a little bit of advice, but then everybody just started asking everybody for advice. It was like, wait, what do you guys do about this? Well, what do you do about this? And we all stayed in the circle and just shared, and it was really powerful and really moving.
That's awesome.
So I think asking for help and being vulnerable and just talking about what isn't working is a great place to start. So I don't know exactly where we are in time, but I think we have enough time for some questions. Okay, that's military time. I'm trying to do the math in my head. Thank you. I love you, thank you so much. So we do have some time for questions. Do we have any questions for Brooke? Yes, in the back.
What are you working on now? You wrote your book, and what's your next step?
So I went from, I wrote my book, and I do a lot of speaking around my book, and then I wrote this piece for Vanity Fair, which got a lot of attention. So I'm talking about doing maybe a podcast and having conversations with other people. This word I'm using is unraveling. I feel like as a result of what happened with me, for me, to me 3 years ago, I have been in the throes of my own unraveling, and I am still unraveling, and I want to talk to other people who have unraveled or who are unraveling, what we can all learn from them. So podcasty, I just came from a lit agent meeting, so maybe there's another book in me. And then I did something really hard. I was sent to the Dominican Republic last March and hosted a reality show for Netflix. So that was super fun. If you guys need to binge something, they wanted to have a host who was a former journalist, because the through line is pulling. It wasn't a dating show. I was like, hi Netflix. By the way, I'm here for dating shows, but I wasn't ready to host a dating show. But it's a smart social competition, social experiment show. And that was really just fun. And what I loved about Netflix is they were like, when you show up and when you have your stylist and pick out all the outfits, could you not look like a news anchor? I was like, yes, I can. That was really fun. So I'm hoping to do more fun hosting, and I've got like a potential serial killer project also.
Ooh,
stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay, anybody in here happen to binge watch serial killer shows while on maternity leave? I did. I don't know about you guys. Yes, other 100%. All right, I'm gonna find you and huddle with you later. Other questions for Brooke?
Who else? Yes. I feel like you knew the Houston Judges story, or you just nodding.
No, I did.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
This is very selfish, but I'm also just very curious. What do you want your legacy to be?
Y'all, I was just on stage with Viola Davis yesterday in California. I asked her that same question, and I always feel like that's such a big question to ask someone.
Sorry.
My legacy. I want to help, I'm just gonna be real, I want to help women feel seen and heard and not alone, and just inspire them through my own story and other women's stories. That's really it. It's that simple. Thank you for asking.
Yes. Yes, you. I'm gonna get it.
We're amplifying our voices, ladies.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
What advice would you give to the next generation, the little girls, the 10
You know what just came into my mind is like, don't forget to look up. We are all like this. I have a 16-year-old in my house every other week, and it is extraordinary how many devices she can be on at once. Brilliant girl, but like, I'm like, sister, right here. Eye contact to me tells me so much about a person. So I think it's about looking up, paying attention, and listening. I think listening is a dying art, and we all can be better listeners, so practice that.
Good advice for us too.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. All right, Raja right here. In the blue. Girlfriend. Oh, you're waiting for your mic. I love it. She's waiting to be amplified. I was like, I can hear you. No, it's fine. I love it.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. I'm curious to hear what advice you may have on how to eloquently respond to someone when they make sexist comments to you. Sarah and I had a really great dinner where I was sharing with her. While pitching to male investors a female-oriented product, we make safety devices that look like jewelry to protect women.
Oh, wow.
But while pitching to investors, I've gotten so many sexist comments. One of them was, if I'm sleeping with my male co-founder, what advice do you have on how to eloquently tell someone
I feel like you fielded some sexist comments.
I don't know how eloquent this response would be, but I would say some version of no. Some version of no. No was a complete sentence. And I would not be afraid. My version of myself where I am now is, record it. You should see the notes section of my phone. Like, write down the details of what happened and...
It's a journalist for you.
Yes, that's what I do. And then I would go find the person. I mean, if this person is the high, is high up there, then that's trickier, obviously. I would limit my exposure to that person as much as I possibly could and find a way to have a conversation with a safe other third party to relay what happened to you. Don't keep it in, but make sure you also write it down for details because someone may come back to you later and want more and you'll have it.
Thank you so much. I ended up writing a blog post about it, and I won Forbes 30 Under 30 in the social impact category last year.
Yeah, you did.
And I wrote a whole part in the article about that. It was very exciting, and that led to $1 million investment from that sexist comment from a female investor who had heard it. So
wow.
It worked well in the end, but it does come up several times. So thank you very much for the great advice.
Wow. In 15 seconds, what would you say to that person?
To that person, I would say thank you for turning something horrible into a really great opportunity. It's a long story, so the 15-second version of it was a financial advisor had witnessed that whole situation go down, and they had gone back and told the woman who he manages her money what happened, and she said, you know what, this same exact thing happened to me when I was raising capital for my first company. Call her up, I want her to come pitch to me, and I want to see the reaction. And she ended up bringing all of her top advisors and asking them to vote on whether or not she should invest in my company, and she had said she was going to invest up to $500,000. And after having all the top female execs at her company share similar scary situations, one of them opened up about a rape. She said, Raja, I'm going to double my investment. I was going to invest up to $500,000, and now I want to invest $1 million.
That's extraordinary. I talked to some survivors from Larry Nassar, if you guys remember, the USA gymnast, her like monster doctor, and that's a huddle also. Is being a survivor and finding other women who are survivors, and it's an army. They created an army, and we saw what happened there. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. This was incredible.
All right, we have
one
time.
more,
Yeah,
and then
one
I've
more.
got to scram.
She's got to scooch, so go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to just make a quick comment about pattern matching that happens in the VC industry for the same reasons, such as the jobs that we may have had previously as founders. I come from Meta, that's notoriously male dominated. I've been through maybe 7 interview rounds with only male teams. I've worked with almost only male teams, but also women are the first ones usually to get laid off because they are the last. It goes through like LIFO kind of structure. So a lot of these things happen. I think so many of us find our identity and our strengths in work, what we do for work. So when such horrible events happen to you throughout your career, how did you stay motivated?
I have to be clear, I never had anything. I actually feel really blessed in that I never was looked at or touched or, sure, people can be creepy, but nothing. I feel lucky. I just had unfortunate, what I write about is instead of, sexual harassment, what I experienced is what I wrote as the 1,000 little cuts. It's it's what happens to all of us, right? It's the gaslighting and the manipulation and the corporate bullying, and it happens in broad daylight. It's very hard to report or to prove, and that was my experience. But I feel fortunate to have not, and I know so many others can't say the same, but chin up and speak up. Okay, so this is my closing story, and then I really have to go to this doc screening for Tribeca. So a couple years ago, thank you, Christine, I had a moment which got seen a lot where we had, I can't remember even what we were talking about, but it was like me, and then we had, we'll call him the boob, and then we had another guy, and I said they were like in double boxes around my head. And whatever it was we were talking about, this guy comes on and he starts talking about the First Amendment and boobs on live air on CNN. And I'm like, when you're on live TV, it's like, you have this quick internal monologue of like, did he just say what I think he did? Now, mind you, I have a male executive producer in my ear and a male boss. And other women around, but in that moment, I kind of he keeps going, and I'm like, it's like slow-mo in my brain. I'm like, what did you say? And he's like, First Amendment and boobs. And eventually, my male executive producer gets in my ear, and he's basically like, move on. He's saying booze. So at some point, I'm like, excuse me, did you just say, I don't know why I spelled it this way, you guys, but I was like, did you just say BOOBS? And he goes, yeah, boobs. And I was like, boof, bye. Cut his mic. We went to commercial break. And it was, I tell this story in my book, Huddle, and it was just crazy that in whatever year it was, that this man felt that he could come. Apparently it's a shtick of his, and shame on my bookers for booking him on my show because they should have anticipated that he was potentially going to do this. This is his thing. And he did it. And it created a thing on the internet, and then he paid people to come and find me in public and just yell boobs, which happened again on live television. So anyway, this is 15 minutes of fame because of me and him on TV. It's like, whatever. But, you know, I did, like, Google Brooke Baldwin and boobs, and there will be a thing that pops up. And you will now understand. But what was very frustrating, what I couldn't really talk about it at the time, is, you know, those moments when we second guess ourselves. I was like, I knew it. Like, my inner voice was like, Brooke, he's saying boobs. But I have external people saying to me, and the boss was calling me into the control room, telling my EP to get me off of it, to move on. And I couldn't. And I don't always listen to myself. We don't always listen to ourselves. But often that inner knowing is right. And often it's boobs.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you guys so much.